Hi everybody, my name is Julie and I work at the Chatham branch at CKPL. As we can't meet up in person right now, we are bringing our programming to you with our Crafternoons to go. Each month we will feature a new kit you can sign up for, and we'll post a video tutorial so we can all craft together. If you weren't able to get a kit, I will go over all of the supplies so you will know what you need to follow along. Let's get started. Hi everyone, our Crafternoon to go project for August is this paper mache lantern. So this project, unlike some of the others, involves a few steps and there is some drawing time involved. So I'd suggest just watching the whole video straight through and then working along at home at your own pace. So I'm just going to show this beautiful lantern, and inside we have this tea light. Just gives some really nice ambiance for some summer evening gatherings. Okay, so the first step in this project, again, this step isn't necessary to create the paper mache lantern, but it adds a lot of prettiness to the project. So I've gone out this morning and I've gathered up a few ferns and flower petals, leaves, and there's a couple different ways you can do this. And we've probably all done this before, is to put them in between some paper, put them in a book, and leave them probably about a week in order to dry. But we wanted to speed up the process a little bit, so I brought my iron from home. I got some parchment paper, and this only takes 10 minutes or so for them to dry out completely. So it's just a bit of a quicker way to get this thing done with the same results. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of parchment paper. And then I'm going to sandwich my leaves and ferns in between the two pieces. Things that are thinner are going to dry a lot quicker than maybe things like my rose petal, my rose flower, but still pretty. And I'm just going to take these apart so they're more individual little petals like this. So you can pretty much do this with whatever you come across in your garden or that looks pretty. I've got my iron on low, and I'm just going to start going over all of the leaves and the petals and the buds to start drying them out. Okay, so I've been doing this for approximately 10 minutes, and I've checked it a couple times to see how things are coming along, and it is dry right now. So we're going to take this off and then carefully remove these. I've moved them a little bit so they're not sticking. Sometimes they stick a little bit, so just if they do, you can pick up your parchment paper and just carefully peel them off like that. So there, we've got our dried floral and ferns ready for our project. Okay, so now for the messy part of this project. In your kit, you're going to have received some printer paper, some tissue paper, and a balloon plus the instructions. You'll need to gather up a few things from home, a container, some flour and salt. It's approximately a cup of flour, teaspoon of salt, and you'll need about a cup of water, but you're just going to have to play it by ear a little bit as we're mixing it up. Okay, so first off, I'm going to mix up the flour and the water to make a paste. So I've got mine already measured out in this baggie, so I'm just going to dump it in. I'm not really measuring, we're just going to go by the consistency of this. And try and get it mixed up enough so that there's not too many lumps. I've taken all my rings off for this project because if you don't, you'll have a big cleaning job on your hands. So we're getting there. Just adding a little bit more water. Try to mush out some of the lumps. Just a little bit more. This is kind of like the consistency of a thin, very thin yogurt. Maybe that's what we're going for. So I'll just kind of tilt it up this way so you can see how it's, see the consistency of that. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside just for a second. And with your printer paper, you're just going to rip it into strips. I'd say about 1.5 inches wide. Approximately. I don't think I'm going to need that one, just set it aside. And I'll set that aside for now too. And we're going to blow up the balloon. So we're going to make it a decent size container. So okay, so there we go. You can make the lantern whatever size you'd like, but I thought that one looked pretty nice. We're going to bring our paste back in and start in with the messy part. So for each strip, so I'm just going to set my spoon aside as well. You're going to dip it in both sides and then run your finger along like so to take off the excess and stick it to your balloon. Smooth it on. So I'm going to set the water aside. Probably be good if you had a plastic plate or something to put your balloon on. That would probably hold it in place better. So we're going to crisscross all the strips of the printer paper. This is what gives it some strength to the whole thing. And when we're doing the top, I'm going to leave this space open enough that you can stick your hand through so that you can put your tea light in. And you can see how we're just fully covering the balloon, crisscrossing the pieces as we go. And you're just going to continue on doing this until you have the entire base of the balloon covered in this layer of printer paper and paste. Okay, so as you can see here, I've completely covered the balloon with a layer of the printer paper, and I hung it up in the closet to dry. I just tied a string around the balloon, hung it over a hanger, and put it in the closet to dry up. So this is completely dry now and ready for the layers of tissue paper. So similar to what we did with the printer paper, we've got our tissue paper, and we're just going to rip it into like not tiny pieces because then it takes way too long, but just pieces about like that. It doesn't have to be even. There we go. So we need to put a little bit of paste on first, and then we're going to put the tissue paper on top, and then I'll add a little bit more paste. So I'm going to do this a little bit more tidily, and I'm going to use a paintbrush instead of my hands this time. So I'm just going to kind of wet the surface so that there's something for the tissue paper to stick on. Like this. Stick it on, and then we're just going to put some on top to stick it down even better. Okay, so it is kind of hard to see where you've got the tissue paper, but you can kind of see it has a little bit of a different texture than just the printer paper. So I want you to continue on doing this until you've got the entire balloon covered with approximately 2 layers of tissue paper. And again, overlapping them the same way that we did the printer paper is a good idea. Just gives a little bit more strength to the whole project. Okay, so just continue on doing the same thing until you got about 2 layers of the tissue paper on there. I've got my 2 layers of tissue paper on. I've hung it up and let it dry. And the first thing I'm going to do right now is pop the balloon. So it's best not to do it so that it pops quickly because it might collapse the structure. So I'm just going to put a tiny little hole in there, let it deflate. This is kind of the cool part. It peels away from the inside. Probably do a little bigger hole. There we go. See how it's deflating and pulling away. And there we go, that worked well. So now we're going to add a layer of our greens to this. So we need another little bit more paste on the outside. Place this on here. Oh, I missed some on the bottom there. And we're going to get some tissue paper and layer it over. And you can see how it still shows through, but it's a little more subtle than putting it right on top. And just continue on with putting your tissue paper on. Just place your greens randomly over your lantern in just whatever way looks good to you. There's no hard and fast rules about this at all. Okay, so you can see how this is starting to come together. And we'll just want to cover the whole thing with tissue paper. Not too many layers, because the thicker it is, when you put your tea light inside, it won't show through as well if you've got too many paper layers. I'm just going to continue on gluing this down, getting it all nice and smooth. A little bit more over there. I'll just rip it. So just continue on with this process until you're happy with where you've got your greens situated on your lantern. Okay, so I have set this aside to dry. It's now complete, and I'm going to add my little tea light candle in there, battery operated, safety first, and there we go. It's now complete. And just a quick word about the paste. I think probably because there is so much drying time in between the different stages, I think if you stored it in an airtight container with a lid on top and probably just gave it a quick mix up before each stage, I think that would probably keep it fresh while you were continuing along with your project. And we are complete. Hope you enjoyed this Crafternoons to go.